Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is VIN 1818, and so this is one that just popped up on Auto Trader. It's a high mileage example. It's a 2016 ultra white, paint code 083 with LA30 interior, showing 142,000 miles, but $35,500. Sounds pretty low if you want to get into a clean title GSF. Let's dive into it, see what we can find out about this one. First off, it looks like it's been a Maryland car for the first 2 years of its life, and then since then it's been in Georgia, and that's where it's for sale. As always, let's do production statistics. There were 647 of the 2,348 GSF produced for the US 49, that's everywhere except Hawaii. Of those 647, 360 were LA30 interior, which is the red interior, the most common combo that you can get on these cars. White with red interior. 54% of these cars are white or black. So very common color, very common combo. For 2016 specifically, 370 of the 1,417 cars that I've identified are ultra white, and of those, 212 have the LA30. So this car is one of 212 that exist in this combo. Again, the most common combination you can get for these cars. Carfax, Epic VIN, and Auto Trader. Carfax shows this as a 2-owner, 1-accident car, and I've actually talked to the second owner, the original, or basically the guy that owned it for the longest period of time. He's owned it from 20-something thousand miles until 141,000 miles. And so I've talked to him, and he said that the accident was a low-speed accident in his neighborhood involving the front bumper. So the front bumper was repaired or replaced. That's basically the extent of it. It was repaired at a quality body shop is what he said. And that's the info I have on the accident. So a little more than what you'd get from the Carfax, but the Carfax doesn't actually show, it doesn't specify the damage. So it's pretty helpful to know that it was the front bumper that was replaced. Epic VIN shows this as a 2-owner, 0-accident car, and AutoCheck also shows it as a 2-owner, 0-accident car. So Carfax is the only one that's actually showing the accident, and it was over a year ago, so surprised to not see that on either of the other two, but that's why it's always important to at least check AutoCheck and Carfax, but I add Epic VIN in there as well since I have an account for that. Previous sales, this car first went on sale in July of 2016 for $87,000 in Maryland. Being VIN 1818, it's one of the later 2016s. The 2017 started somewhere around VIN 2000 or so. I don't have that on my notes here, but just know that it's a later 2016. So still September to December, it was still for sale, didn't sell. It finally was sold in January of 2017. So it took about 6 months before it was first sold. You've heard me talk about it in other videos. These cars did not sell well when they were brand new. If they were priced more around the $65,000 to $70,000 range, I think they would have sold a whole lot better, but the price was the reason. This car sitting around for 6 months, that's not unheard of, and so as was the case here. So the next sale was July of 2018, where it was for sale in Georgia for $56,000 with about 26,000 miles, and that is where the second owner picked it up and put about 120,000 miles on it and had it for about 7 years. He actually put it up for sale in a Facebook group for $29,000 with 141,000 miles. Had 3 or 4 pictures. Not very great pictures, but at $29,000, that's rebuilt title price, and you can get a clean title GSF with some higher mileage. That's a steal of a deal, and so I'm not surprised that everybody jumped on that. What he ended up doing was selling it to a broker, is what it looks like, and he sold it or is brokering it on behalf of a dealership. And now here it is, August of 2025. It's listed at an independent dealer, probably on behalf of the broker, for $7,500 more and 1,000 more miles, $35,500 with 142,000 miles. So obviously we know what he paid for it. We know he paid somewhere around $29,000 or less for it. And so he's got to make some money. And so now you can see what his profit margin is. Getting into the pictures, the dealer that's providing the pictures, they're kind of low resolution photos. So that's kind of all I have to go off of, as well as some of the pictures from the previous owner. Now, I do notice very heavy kind of baked on brake dust on these wheels, and that's pretty common. That can be pretty difficult to get off depending on how perfect you want it, but I don't see any curb rash or anything like that. It's got some high quality tires on it. Again, no issues there. The carbon fiber and the steering wheel both look pretty rough. The steering wheel, the dealer provided photos, you can't tell very much that it needs a new steering wheel, or at least it recovered, but there's one photo where you can see right here, there's just a corner of it where you can see, but the steering wheel definitely looks pretty rough. Those are not inexpensive to repair or replace, so that is something to consider if you want it absolutely perfect. If you just want to get in and drive it, you own a GSF, by all means just leave it alone and go enjoy it. The carbon fiber, it looks like all of the doors, front and back, have the issue of the delaminating carbon fiber. If not bad, it looks like it's started, but I would assume the others probably need attention. Again, they're poor quality photos, so it's hard to tell, but basically put some money aside for carbon fiber repair, send it to that company in Florida, SMA Fabrication, that'll redo it for a couple $100 a piece. So instead of spending $8,000 to $10,000 to replace that carbon fiber, you're in it like $1,000 and a few hours of your time. I did ask the second owner about the valley plate, and he said it has been inspected, he's aware of the issue, but it has never been an issue with this car. In other videos, I've talked about the valley plate leak on these cars, and it's not if, it's when it happens. And so I think if you're purchasing this car, just make sure you put about $1,500 to $2,000 aside to repair that valley plate leak, because it's coming, and it's all of these cars will eventually have that issue. And it's just now getting of that time. It's time and heat cycles. It's not necessarily mileage. And so that's why here it is 142,000 miles and it doesn't have a valley plate leak right now. But it's once it gets more heat cycles in it, you're gonna probably see that become an issue. So other issues that I haven't seen done on the service history, there's no evidence of the ZLZ being done, which is the dash, the cracked dash, sticky dash, anything like that. Lexus will cover that for up to 10 years from the end service date, so it looks like you've got probably another year on that until you're out of luck for the coverage. I don't see anything about lower control arm bushings being replaced. So again, the usual things that you see on these cars, I would check the inner tire wear. I'd check the front tires for inner tire wear, and if that's the case, you're gonna need tires, an alignment, and lower control arm bushing. So there's more money that's sitting there that you may have to put in this, but for now, 140,000 miles, and maybe it doesn't have that problem. I don't know, but that's just something that, looking at these cars, you always inspect that stuff. I guess finally, the only other thing that I really didn't see done on this car are the HVAC servos, any servo sweeps, servo reprogramming for any of that. I don't see it done, but this has been a pretty much southern car after the first 2 years. It seems to affect more of the cars in the northern climates, colder climates, but this car, no issues there. But if I was inspecting it, if I was going to look at it, I would definitely make sure you put one side on max hot, one side on max cold, heat, defrost, floor, kind of cycle all through them to make sure that they do everything they need to do. So now let's jump into the service history. The first thing to note is April of 2017, 7,000 miles, the low pressure fuel pump was reprogrammed. It has that buzzing or humming noise that you hear from the back seat. There's a technical service bulletin for it. That's addressed and done, so that's good to see. A lot of these high mileage cars that you see, a lot of this is usually taken care of. A year later, April of 2018, 21,000 miles, the front carbon fiber was noted as peeling, and I think that's the piece on the front bumper they're talking about, quoted as $6,575 to replace it, and the right rear tail lamp at a cost of about $795. They were just quoted, it doesn't look like they were replaced there. A month later, May of 2018, 23,000 miles, they did the JLB recall, which that's the high pressure fuel pumps, both the left and the right. Good to see that that's done and taken care of. 2 months later, July 2018, at 25,000 miles, the right headlight, it was stated that it had moisture in it, and it was not replaced, but they quoted $4,306 to replace that. 2 months later, 27,000 miles, so 2 months and 2,000 miles later, which is also the last service at Lexus, the right headlight was reported with the daytime running light not working. That's pretty much related to the moisture being in it, because if the moisture gets in the housing, it's going to get into the controller that is right underneath it, which controls the daytime running lamp and everything else. They did note that it says the part is tampered and or modified by a non-Lexus facility. So sounds like maybe somebody tried to repair it themselves and it was not successful, but they did not replace it, and they quoted again about $4,000 to replace the headlight. So that would be something I would check out. If you're looking at this car, make sure you look at the passenger side headlight, the right side headlight, to make sure that the daytime running light works, make sure that the headlight works. I would probably plug in a scanner. If you have a kind of a fancy scanner or something that goes a little more in depth than your basic scanner, to make sure that there's no stored codes in the body control module, which would be reported from the headlight and things like that, and the servos and so on. Scanners are very important with these cars for getting some of the history. The last service at Lexus on this car was 7 years ago, but it sounds like, based on what I'm seeing on the Carfax, it was just serviced at places like Walmart, Jiffy Lube, kind of the quick oil change type of places since then. Definitely on the budget side of things, I would assume. And so finally, would I buy this car? I think I would go into it, well, I have the knowledge now that the current selling dealer paid $29,000 or less for this car. At $29,000, that's rebuilt title price. $28,000 to $32,000 is a rebuilt title price for these cars. This car at that price is one hell of a bargain. And I still think at $35,000, $35,500, it's still a pretty good bargain, but because you know what he paid, you know, you have room to negotiate. I would go into it knowing to expect to replace the valley plate, may have to do tires, may have to do brakes. You know, you don't know when those were last done, but the carbon fiber, that's a pretty significant expense. So at $29,000, that was probably a fantastic price, knowing you would have to spend several $1,000s on this car. At $35,000, you're competing with the $40,000, low 40s cars that may not have any of these issues, and a few less miles. So that being said, I would buy this probably at like 32, 33. That would probably be where I would be, knowing that I'd have to put money into it. Now, it looks like it's a great car though. You know, it was well serviced at the dealer, and then it was oil changes and, you know, basic stuff outside of the dealer. Now, this would be just a great car to jump in and go drive. You could drive it as is and just slowly address some of the issues as you go if you're trying to buy it on a budget. But I think it's just a great driver's quality car that you can just go in and enjoy. So yeah, I would definitely consider this if I was in the market. And you know, you've heard me talk about it in other videos. I am in the market for something like this, you know, kind of on the lower end of the price, higher mileage, where I can just go in and drive it. And you know, this one gets to stay as the nice car, and the other one I get to go and drive and enjoy. So that's what I've got for you guys. This has been 1818. Definitely worth a look, but see if you can get it a little cheaper. That's where I'm at. So thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.